Second most powerful country in the region will be communist China. The United States, having no military or diplomatic credibility in the region, will then retreat back to its borders and try to catch the terrorists as they cross into our nation. How good are we at catching people crossing into our nation? This will constitute your war without end. A nuclear-armed Iran, with the help of communist China and revanchist Russia, will then use it as a nuclear umbrella to export terror to other regions of the world, namely the free world, and there will be nothing we can do about it, except try to stop them before they kill you here or somewhere else in the United States. Western Europe will be under intense pressure. The oil from the regimes that have been deposed, the oil from the free governments that have been deposed, will then be used as an economic weapon against you and as a revenue generator for the terrorists and the Iranian regime that is bent upon your destruction. It seems to me that a cut in funding right now would be a betrayal of our troops, it would be a betrayal of the Iraqis, and it would be a betrayal of future generations of Americans yet unborn who would like the same opportunity to yearn, breathe free in an environment of liberty and security which we now currently enjoy. I'm thinking of the long term. I'm thinking of my 14-year-old, my 12-year-old, my 9-year-old. I do not want to see them live in a war without end. I do not want to see their hopes and dreams dashed because for short-sighted political expediency, members of the United States Congress decided to unilaterally declare defeat in Iraq. And for those of you who, like Speaker Pelosi, do not believe that Iraq is part of the, quote, real war on terror Afghanistan is, I would like to point out from the video yesterday, Mr. bin Laden still disagrees with you. Now, the question is, how do you get the message of the consequences of defeat out? Well, one of the things that we have to do in this country is begin to teach geography, civics, and history. For anyone to believe that Iraq is not a central front in the war on terror, just look at a map of the Middle East and tell me where you happen to find Iraq. The Republican Party has a theory which I have always disdained. The theory is that if we do not talk about Iraq, somehow the problem will go away as a political matter. One, I think that is a complete abnegation of our responsibility to lead in the capacities we've been entrusted by the people of the United States. And secondly, as an old precinct delegate and state party activist myself, I got news for you. Just because you stop talking about something doesn't mean that the Democrats will. And so, if you're afraid that talking about Iraq and the consequences of failure somehow constitute treading water on your part, I remind you it is better to tread water than to drown. But more importantly, as someone who watched Ronald Reagan's initially very unpopular beliefs about winning the Cold War, do you remember what Ronald Reagan said when asked about the Cold War? This was the, quote, amiable dunce, according to the geniuses at the New York Times. Ronald Reagan was asked, all the sophisticated diplomacy and the machinations. They said, well, how do you plan to deal with the Soviet Union in the Cold War, candidate Reagan? He said, we win, they lose. The sheer genius of the man. Now, the left wing never understood with Ronald Reagan. He was so stupid, we all understood and agreed with him. What we need to do is not just talk about this honestly and openly, about the consequences of failure, but look at the consequences of victory in Iraq. Look at the consequences. Go back to what President Reagan did. The Reagan doctrine improved upon the Truman policy of expanding liberty through multilateral organizations. If you break freedom loose in the captive nations of Eastern Europe and elsewhere, the nuclear-armed Soviet Union would peacefully implode as their people wanted the same freedom. This is where they thought he was nuclear cowboy, he's crazy, this is dangerous. Reagan said peace through strength will work. We will continue to support the people of Eastern Europe as they try to be free. And eventually the Soviet Union, an intrinsically evil empire, will collapse. Look at the map of the Middle East. Look at where liberty is being fought for and sacrificed for by Americans and Iraqis, Americans and Afghanistan's people. Look at where Iran sits, and you tell me this. How long does the Iranian regime last if on the borders the people of Iran see freedom, see liberty, see hope? It is my belief that if we continue to go forward in the Middle East, if we stand firm behind the conviction that liberty is the fundamental God-given right of every single human being, then the United States will one day see the Iranian mullahs peacefully implode, hopefully before they acquire a nuclear weapon. But ask yourself this question. If the United States says to the Iraqi people, and if ultimately the people of Afghanistan, our commitment to liberty is not what we said it was, what will you then offer the people of the Middle East not to become extremists and terrorists and kill you? If not liberty, what do we have to offer the people who are oppressed throughout the world? I argue a free trade agreement will not be enough to blanch the tide of enmity that will be headed your way. Will we win? Yes, we will. Americans throughout their times of crisis, this is no different, have always had deep divisions in the country over major issues in the course of the country. It's a revolutionary experiment in democracy. It's a work in progress, but it is our duty to continue that work. We will. We will take the legacy of liberty that has been bequeathed to us by generations of Americans before who have sacrificed, many of them paying the ultimate price, so that we too would expand the promise and hope of freedom to others, and therefore preserve our own liberty for ourselves and our generations yet unborn. I thank you for having me, and I thank you all you do for the Republican Party, and most importantly for our country in this time of crisis. It will get better, and it will get better because of you. Thanks.